Hi guys, big news. Got my first live tomorrow, so please tune in for that if you can. I'm really looking forward to it. I was just looking at people doing lives. I was on Stu from Backcountry, Stu Student, and really enjoyed that. I also thought that it was kind of the direction I want to take my channel in because I've asked a few times if people want the Q&A, and a lot of people have liked the things that I put up, but nobody really answers. So I said, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. So I'll be doing that tomorrow at 10 p.m. And if it seems like it's a bit late for people in Ireland or the UK, I understand, but I know there are people from the US and Australia that watch the channel as well. So it'll be 10 a.m. in Australia. And then obviously in the US, there's a few different time zones as well. So, Julie, you were asking, is it 5 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time? Yes, looked it up. So yeah, you're right. And so you'll be 5 hours behind. So it'll be on at 5 p.m. in your time. And then Greg, please, Greg, I want you to join for sure. You're in Washington State, so not Washington D.C. because I kept looking for Washington State time and it kept bringing me up into Washington D.C. And as you know, Greg, they're vastly different. So it'll be 3 p.m. Washington State time. So really hope that Greg can join us because it'd be great to have a really good member of the channel coming along. I also know from doing my interview with Megan Mellon of Sober Strong that Idaho. So if you're in Idaho by any chance, it's 7 hours, seven behind. So it'll be um, 3 p.m. as well. It should be the same. So it'll be 3 p.m. in Washington State and Idaho. And they're near enough, aren't they? So yeah. And then Dave Brown, we were having a chat, the Portsmouth man with the cane gore. So really sorry to hear about your dog, Dave. And I'm sure people will be in with best wishes tomorrow. So please tune in. And just for anyone who doesn't know, and I mentioned it tomorrow because I just want to give a special shout out to Dave Brown. Um, his poor dog's been put to rest on Friday. So RIP, losing an animal is awful. I found it worse than losing a family member, to be honest, a human family member, because dogs are family members at the end of the day. And all they ask for is your love, undivided love. So, yeah, I'm sorry to hear, Dave, but I'll definitely give you a shout out tomorrow anyway. And please make it if you can. It'd be great to have everyone along. I plan on doing it for about 1 hour, maybe longer. Sorry, I just had to pause it for a second, but yeah, it should be really good. I'm looking forward to it. The reason it's at 10 p.m. is simply just for trying to get as many people in as possible. So if you're in Australia and you can watch, please do. If not, I understand, but that's the reason why I made it 10 p.m., 10 on the dot. So, because I was thinking, will I make it at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., but then sure, who'll be watching at 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. or sorry, 9 a.m. because then in the US, you're getting to 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And yeah, I just thought it'd be easier. If anyone would like me to start it earlier and then everyone can join when they want, or even if you just want to pop in below and leave a message like saying hi or whatever, please do. If you can only join us for a few minutes, that's absolutely fine. Don't feel like you have to stay for the whole thing. I'll understand. I won't cry too much. But I wanted to just talk about something here briefly. I feel like it's important to talk about it now and to update you guys just as it happened because I'll be celebrating 8 months, 8 months off alcohol in just 2 days, which is incredible. So, um, just 3 days, 3 days, Saturday. My apologies. So yeah, it'll be Saturday when I celebrate the 8 months of sobriety. So 3/3 of a year. But while I've been keeping on top of that addiction, there's another one that's kind of crept up, and it's one that I really want to look at because it's one I've struggled with before. I have a mate who's lost thousands on gambling, and that's the big one. Gambling is huge. And I want to just actually show you something, which is very concerning. It's very worrying. And as I looked it up, I'm shocked to see what actually pops up. So before I go into it and ruin it, what I looked up was the gambling epidemic, and you'll see what I typed in and watch what popped up immediately. Not worrying studies on the dangerous effects of gambling or the massive amounts of suicide that happen from gambling. But look what comes up instead. So this is what I typed in, which is very concerning. Let's see here. I just want to make sure that I'm still recording, guys. Yeah, I'm still recording. Happy days. So yeah, you type in gambling epidemic, and then look, top 10 betting games and casinos, fast payout casino sites, best blackjack sites. Like, it's actually sinful. And like 10 best online casinos in Ireland, top 10 casino betting sites. It's all good things about gambling. And we get to it. So, how many have we gone through there where it's actually trying to big up gambling? One, two, three, three sites. Well, technically five because there's another two underneath. Then we actually get to it, what they're saying about it. So, the actual epidemic. The gambling epidemic is a growing concern for public health, with the rise of online gambling and sports betting leading to increased public health implications. A report from Harvard Kennedy School and the Lancet estimates. Sorry. So, a report from Harvard Kennedy School and the Lancet estimates that 46% of adults and nearly 18% of adolescents have gambled in the past year, with gambling considered a health harming addictive behaviour. The industry has effectively portrayed gambling's harms as the faults of individuals, but experts recommend treating gambling as a public health issue. The prevalence of gambling the prevalence of gambling disorders is estimated to be around 72 million globally, with the number likely to increase as commercial organizations target younger audiences. And I just want to have a word on that for a moment because Roblox, if you've seen that, and I was working with younger kids, so these are 10 year olds, like, it's 10, 11. My camera just froze there, so 10, 10-year-old young fellas and young girls, but mostly young fellas are, you know, they mature fast, they mature slower than girls, so their brains actually develop slower than young women, so they're definitely more prone to this, and they're also more impulsive. So it's a big concern among young men in particular, but that's not to say that it doesn't affect young women as well. And on Roblox, it was basically telling you to pull a slot and then pay money for different upgrades in the game. Now, I didn't really understand it, I'm not really a big gamer, but they were asking me, could I buy them updates? And I was like, I can't. They were like, oh, if I bring in my parents' credit cards, and I was like, is this setting them up for gambling? Because if they pull the slot and they get a good number, it triggers that reward game. It's like a machine, they play in the slots, the fruit machines as they're called over here in the UK. Where you get the ding ding ding, bar bar bar, ding ding, or you get the slice of watermelon, or jackpot, jackpot, jackpot. It's really programming the brains to see, oh yes, I win. I've got the lucky spin. So it's quite concerning, to be honest. But yeah, it says it here 72 million globally. I'd say it's more than that, to be honest with you. And it's expected to increase. The rapid growth of gambling is driven by commercialization and digitization, with smartphone use in low and middle income countries playing a significant role. The industry analysis, I'm fucking having so many slip ups today. Sorry. The industry analysts estimate that global gambling revenue will reach 700 billion US dollars by 2028, highlighting the need for stronger regulations to protect public health. Well, that's very concerning, but I know it's a big issue in the US, and if anyone wants to talk about that tomorrow, by all means, put it in there. But I want to look at Ireland in particular because it's one that I've seen firsthand. again, gambling epidemic in Ireland. This is what pops up. The best places to do it. Get yourself deals. Like it's sinful how they do it and they get away with it. So let's have a look at it here. So the gambling epidemic in Ireland is a significant public health concern. It's all lip service by the sounds of it, isn't it? But anyway, with a substantial number of adults struggling with gambling problems, recent studies estimate that 130,000 adults in Ireland suffer from a gambling problem, equating to 3.3% of adult population. This figure is 10 times higher than previous estimates from 2019. Additionally, 279,000 adults show moderate evidence of problem gambling, indicating a broader range of negative behaviours associated with gambling. The problem gambling epidemic is most common in 30 to 39 age group and is higher among men with lower educational attainment. So that there you go. There tends to be more addiction among the poorer educated anyway, The better educated you are, statistically, the less likely you are to pick up the bad habit, hopefully, So the situation is exacerbated by the prevalence of comorbid addictions, usually, and I'll just say it before they mention it, but where do you see a lot of bookies? You see them right next to the pubs, have a few drinks, lose your senses, head straight over to the pub. Head over to the pub, head over to the bookies from the pub. She's scattered around. I thought it was supposed to do my brain good, not drinking. But you'll have to bear with me. I'm tapering off mirtazapine, as I mentioned, so it is having a few brain fog moments. So my apologies, but we'll get there. We'll get there. But once you have one addiction, such as drinking, alcohol lowers your inhibitions. So you think, oh, it's a great idea. Head straight over to the bookies after going for a few drinks, then head back to the pub. What I've done before and with a few mates is we'll get our bets on. We'll go into the bookies beforehand. Then we'll go for a few drinks. We'll sit there and watch the game. And then we have a vested interest in who wins. And I've talked about this before, but it gave me back the feeling that I used to have as a kid. That joy you get watching games? That went for me, that feeling in your stomach that you genuinely want your team to win and you're really happy when they do and you're devastated when they don't. But that feeling left me a long time ago. And gambling gave me back that feeling because I was like, right now, even the team that I don't necessarily even support, I want them to win because that dopamine hit that I get when they win is out of this world. So, as they say, the situation is exacerbated by the prevalence of comorbid addictions. I managed to get exacerbated, but then comorbid addictions threw me up. With many gamblers also dealing with substance misuse or nicotine dependence. So yeah, you'll also see a lot of old fellas, older men, to those who don't know, older lads smoking a few cigarettes outside and then going in, putting their bed on. So there's a lot of unhealthy habits associated with this. Imagine how much money all these companies are making off your addiction. So you're smoking, you're drinking, and you're gambling. You could be doing other things as well. Probably drinking energy drinks if you're young to keep yourself going because you're so out of it from all the bills you've been taking. Imagine what that's doing to your health. The Irish government is responding to this issue with legislative reforms, including the establishment of the new Gambling Regulatory Authority of Ireland, aimed at protecting vulnerable individuals and regulating the gambling industry. And then we see www.drugsandalcohol.ie. Well, let's look at the fact sheet, will we? Gambling addiction. Yeah, let's look at this. So before we go into this, I want to just give you a background into what happened to me only recently. So I was gloating about it, which I shouldn't have been doing in hindsight. I put on the bet and it won. I just got a feeling, in my head that, oh yeah, go put this bet on and you'll get a bit of money from it. So I won €50, a bit over like €55 on a bet, where I bet on France to beat Ireland in the rugby. I just didn't see us winning, sorry. And then Matthew Jalibert and Teo Adesogbi to score tries. And then the buzz I got off that, now that's betting against my own team. turncoat, you know. I won a bit of money, so I felt delighted. But Teo Adesogbi scored a try in the last minute of the game. And I was there thinking, oh shit, I've just lost €10. And then he scored. And I was like, yes. That feeling of, plummeting, and let's face it, it's plummeting despair, goes to elation. You know, your elation goes through the roof and you get such a dopamine hit because you thought that it wasn't going to work out. You thought you were after losing money and then bang, last minute you win. You're like, yes. So you get that rush of dopamine, adrenaline. You think, yes, I fucking won the money. Great. And then I have one rule that has kind of helped me, and that's that I don't have any of the online betting apps because they're very easy to, you go on your phone, you put in whatever you want, and then they give you all these options and they're bombarding you with cash out now or, accumulator. Do you want Liverpool to beat Wolves, which they didn't manage to do yesterday? Thank God I didn't bet on that, but that's what everybody's saying. I'm taking a break from Liverpool for my own mental health. And yet they managed to qualify straight into the round of 16 from the Champions League. They got from the group stage there, so they finished in the top eight. They did pretty well in that regard, but I've been watching a bit of Champions League, and that's actually taken me to the next part of it. So I've been doing my my anxiety management group. So, like I was saying, the one rule I have is that I don't go on the online apps, although I've downloaded one and I want to delete it now. Um, this is how it gets started, and I think nipping it in the bud now is the best thing to do because this is how it all starts. So I won that €55 on France to beat Ireland. Sorry, guys, but I just thought that's what's going to happen. And when I used to compare bets with my mates, they used to always say, "Oh, you're betting with your heart. You're not betting with your brain." So what they were saying is, what do you realistically think is going to happen? And then think about that. Do you actually think Ireland are going to beat France? No, I didn't. So that's why I didn't put any money on Ireland to win. Then I had a feeling they might beat England, and they go and they do it. But I didn't think they were going to beat them by that much. What a win that was! And I'm hoping to make a video on that before the end of the week. I've just had a lot bothering me and going on at the minute. So, but getting that dopamine rush and winning that money, you know what that does in my psyche? It makes me think, right, now you've got €55. So you're €55 up. No matter how much you have in your bank account, you're betting money, you're €55. So go and put more money on, you'll win. And think about it, plan it out, make a list of it. I have actually a slip up here of my last one. I don't know if you could read that, but yeah, that's what it led to. And it's happened before, so you get that dopamine rush that spikes, and then you think, that's great, but now that's going back down. I won last time, so my luck is in. I better go put another one on. So I was looking at rugby games, and I didn't really fancy the odds, because it was France against Italy. Or sorry, was it? No, it was France were playing Wales, and I thought France will definitely beat Wales. But no, sorry, it wasn't. It was a different week, so I put the one on. Yeah, I put it on France to beat Ireland, and then the next week they played Wales. But then, yeah, so just trying to. Yeah, Scotland were playing England. Um, Scotland were playing England, and we played Italy. That's right, we played Italy. Um, and France did play Wales. So yeah, it was that week. And I was there thinking, oh yeah, well, all right, I'll put it on that. And then I thought, what are the odds going to be? And I thought, I bet Scotland would beat England, which they did. But even putting the bet on France to beat Wales, Ireland to beat Italy, which they just about managed to do, and Scotland to beat England, the odds weren't great. Like for a tenner, I only got €22 back, including the money I won. So I thought, no, fuck that. There's no point in doing that. So I started looking at the football. And if you see the teams here, actually, I'll go through it with you. I remembered a lot of them. And I actually kind of got a moment where I was like, oh, is that a sign? So you start thinking the weirdest shit when you're doing it. But so if you can see any of them, I'll just hold it up again. But it was the first leg of the playoffs. So the teams basically that were in the knockout stage. So you know the teams that finished in the it wasn't the top eight, but they finished below that, so it was the top. There was another 14 places, wasn't there? Yeah, because I'm just looking at it here. So you've got one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah. So the top 24 teams, what happens is the top eight go in, or yeah, top 10. Yeah, it's the top 10, sorry, that go straight through. And then the next 14 teams play each other. And so what my thinking was, okay, I'll go and I'll put a bet on that. So I looked at the Benfica Real Madrid game and I was thinking, oh, I reckon Benfica could do that. Then I got a feeling, like there was an angel or I suppose a devil in this case, but something just told me don't put the money on that game. Now I bet on the second leg and it did come true for me, but Benfica beat Real Madrid to make it to the playoffs 4-2 and their keeper scored. Yeah, like so 4-2, but the keeper got the last goal, Anatoly Trubin, the Ukrainian fella. So that was insane. So I remembered that, and then it kind of got a brain flash, and I was like, yeah, Benfica could definitely do it, but I don't know. It's Real Madrid, you never know what you're going to get with them. And then Vinicius score and all the shit that happened after that game. Mourinho got sent to the stands. I forgot that he was coaching Benfica this time and not Real Madrid because he had been there for so long. And just that was one hell of a game. It was very controversial at the end, but what happened to was it? It was Gianluca Prestiani, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, he's in big trouble now. But anyway, that's another discussion for another day. I thought leave that game. Then there was Bayer Leverkusen were away to Olympiacos, who also beat them. And I thought leave that game. It's just something with me and German teams. I don't know what it is, but they're always a bit iffy for me. Um, so I thought I'll leave that one. And then Olympiacos scored a goal and had it disallowed. And then Patrick Schick, who also Irish have to face in about 3 weeks now. Yeah, we'll be facing Patrick Schick, and he's in good form. The big Czech striker. So yeah, nervous for that because he's in form, but I genuinely want us to win that, and I think we can. I'm looking forward to that game. If the Parrot can fly us all the way to the World Cup, 5 goals in just 2 games. That's right, five, five. Put my thumb in. 5-2. That's pretty impressive. 2 goals against Portugal, and then he was the better seven in the night, and then he scored 3 against Hungary in Hungary, and a last minute toe poke. What a game! And that was genuinely good to watch. But it can go so many different ways. So I did leave the Bayer Leverkusen game, and then I looked at other games where I thought, "Ooh, what do I reckon is going to happen here?" So I looked at Galatasaray playing Juventus, Uve, and I thought Galatasaray are very strong at home, so I bet on them to win. And I thought, yeah, they might be a bit iffy and have bad form. They lost the game to Union Saint Gilloise from Belgium, but their home record is very good. Like they beat Liverpool, they hammered. Who did they hammer? And beat Bodo Glimt. They beat Frankfurt. Or did not? They actually lost. I think they got beat 5-1 in Frankfurt by Frankfurt, but they got wins over PSV and they got a home draw against Atletico Madrid, who are tricky customers. And because of them, I fucking lost out on a lot of money. The bastards. Shouldn't be laughing, but it's true. So I was there thinking Galatasaray, I'm just giving you an example of what my mind goes through when I'm putting on these bets. I think I've got it all laid out. And so I was thinking, what games do I genuinely think, regardless of the odds, I think the team will win? And I got really good odds. So I'm just looking at it now. Like for Juventus to beat Galatasaray at home was 2-5. They were the favourites away as well. It was like 23-20 or something for Galatasaray to win. So that's going to bring your odds right up. Basically, what that means is not you get a bit more than what you put on. So if you bet a fiver, you get a fiver back, but you get a little bit more, and then that multiplies by the other bets. So that kind of brings it up. That's why it's called an accumulator, because you accumulate wealth. So I put it on that. Then I looked at other games and I thought, oh, Bodo Glint and Inter Milan. I was there thinking Bodo, like they had good form, and geez, I sound like I'm encouraging you what to do, but this is what I was thinking. I was thinking they're Norwegian champs, but against Inter Milan, the pedigree of Inter Milan. But then I thought, well, they did manage to beat Man City and they managed to beat Atletico Madrid at Estadio Metropolitano with that lunatic Diego Simeone marching up and down the sidelines. So they obviously proved that it's not just a one off fluke. They can beat bigger teams away from home. But I put it on Inter initially. And then just thinking of the other one, I also bet on, because I just want to look at it now, Newcastle against Azerbaijani champions Karabakh, or Qarabag, as Brian Kerr calls them. Gotta love Brian. Brian's a very smart man. He was a chemistry analyst, a chemistry technician, bit of a smart cookie, all right. But yeah, I bet on Newcastle to be Karabag, and they can be tricky opponents. But Anthony Gordon, he stood up big time, got 4 goals, and put them away. Now in the reverse leg, geez, Newcastle nearly lost it, but they had it wrapped up. Like it was 9-3 on aggregate. So, but yeah, Newcastle won 6-1 in the end, so that was a nice one. I was thinking of the other ones I bet on. So I put on 16, yeah. So I put on PSG to beat Monaco in Monte Carlo. And that was a tricky one now. But then the last one I did was Club Brugge, Bruges to beat Atletico Madrid. And then Club Brugge are tricky customers. Like they're tough opponents, and they've beaten some big teams. Like they beat Atalanta. And that's another one. Actually, that was the last one I put on. I put on Borussia Dortmund to beat Atalanta. So I talked about German teams letting me down before, but I put the money on Dortmund because I thought they will win. Now the second leg of that was another really exciting game. Yeah, 3-1, and Borussia Dortmund on the up, coming back into the game after Karim Adeyemi scores a brilliant goal with his left foot cutting inside, and then a moment of madness from Konrad Kubel, the Swiss keeper, coming out of his goal, and then Mario Pasalic, the Croatian, putting a really good cross in. And then I love this name; it's one of the coolest names I've seen. Rami Bensebaini, the big Algerian centre back. He's quite a good player, but the big back heel wasn't looking, and he caught the striker Kristovic's head pumping blood, and he went off. And then 2 players from either team, Nico Schlotterbeck, and I can't remember who else, but one player from each team, 2 in total, were sent off, and they hadn't even gotten on the pitch. And then Benzabaini was also shown a red for that challenge. That was mad. But going back to, I bet on the first legs, so I watched Galatasaray against Uve, Juventus. And so I was watching that game, and they scored a great goal, Galatasaray, to open up. But then shortly afterwards, that prick Goop Miners, the Dutch fella, scored 2 goals, like banged in the goals, really good finishes. And I was like, oh shit, I was really worried. But Galatasaray were on the up, like they were attacking really well. And I feel like a commentator here, but I was there going, oh shit, the first game's down and I'm losing my money already. And then, the left back Cambiasso got a yellow card, and I was thinking, keep getting at him, get him sent off. Evil little fucker that I am, but um, they were on the attack, and I was really happy. And then I was worried because it was 2-1 to Juve at half time. And I thought, oh, Galatasaray will have enough to come back. And boy, did they. Boy, did they. Then they scored a goal. And then the replacement left back, Cabral was his name. And he gets sent off. He gets 2 yellow cards and he goes to the bin. Poor bastard. But then Galatasaray just took off. Noah Lang banging in the goals. So, yeah, he got 2 and really did a good job. Davidson Sanchez, the centre back, the Colombian centre back, got a massive goal for them as well to draw them level. And Morgan Bowie, the French right back for Galatasaray, what a goal, what a finish. So yeah, 5-2. I was over the moon. I was like, yes, they won. They kept me going. So I was delighted with that. Then Monaco played PSG. Monaco started they were on fire. 2 goals by Leon Balogun. I think it's Leon. Balogun's his second name anyway, but he banged them in, and I was like, oh fuck. Of all the games, I thought PSG are going to win this, but they went behind really early on, and Usman Dembele was having a shocker. Vitinha, the Portuguese Jack Grealish. I just think he looks the image of Jack Grealish, except Portuguese, smaller, with the same hair, the little tiny goatee. He missed the penalty, and I thought, oh fuck, I'm going to lose my money. But then Desiree Doué, he stepped up and he scored 2 massive goals, really good finishes. Ashraf Hakimi as well, brilliant finish from him on the rebound. So it was a 3-2, 3-2. So I was like, whew, my heart was gone. And then Dortmund went and they beat Atlanta 2-0. While I was putting on this bet, Jesus, I forgot to mention the most important part. I put in coins, so you get your coins and you go and you put them in the slot. They kept popping back out of the machine into my hand, so I was like, "Oh, is this a sign?" That's what I took it as. I took it as a sign, and then I said, "All right, I know what I'm going to do here. I'm going to put the money on Bodo Glint instead of Inter Milan," and that was the one that I was really nervous about. I was like, "Oh fuck, should I put the money on that because that's a really dodgy one?" Um, but I put it on anyway. Newcastle hammered Karabag, so I was delighted with that. Um, and Bodo Glint went and they won 3-1, like 3-1 against Inter, the finalists last year, albeit they lost 5-0. But I was like, yes, you beauties, because they really brought the odds up. It was like 10-3, and not time now, but 10-3. So I was literally trebling my money. So I put a fiver on. That was 15 back anyway. And then it was multiplied by all the other money that I put on, plus because I put on 2 teams that were unlikely to win. I ended up being able to boost my bet. So I got another €300 added on if it won. I could either do that or I could pay out if one team let me down. Yeah, just one. So all the teams, 5 of them, stood up, even though it was very dodgy, with PSG. And Bodo Glimt went and had an absolute stormer of a game. So then Club Brugge and Atletico Madrid came around, and I was like, okay, this is the one now. One more game, and I'm up a grand. It was like €1,200 for €5. That's what I was going to win back. And so I thought to myself, great, I'll put that on. This will win. And then I thought, Club Brugge, I did genuinely fancy them to beat Atletico Madrid because Atletico Madrid have had a really dodgy form. But they got up, So your man Joaquin says, "Oh, did my head in," because I was there thinking, who jumps like that and then falls with their hand out like that? They were matching them, They were the more skillful team. Atletico Madrid got extremely lucky, and he jumped, got the ball in his hand, it hit his hand in an unnatural position, and Julian Alvarez stepped up, banged it in the back of the net. So that was like a real crusher for me because it was like, oh shit, but it's early, so they can still go on and do it, and they got more chances. They were taking a lot of shots at goal, and I was thinking, okay, they'll get back into it, and then completely against the run of play, the corner came whooshing in, and Adamola Lookman got a really lucky finish at the back post. So 2-0 down, and I was like, shit, this is going to be a really tall order for Club Brugge. So I was looking, I was checking my phone, I was watching the whole thing, and I was checking this as well. I was like, all right, if they win, I'm up. I need them to come back. I need them to do it now. So Raphael Onyedika managed to pull a goal back from a corner, and it was 2-1. And then I was thinking, great, they're on the up, and it was only 53 minutes gone. Then at 60 minutes, Nicolo Tresoldi, the young striker for a Club Brugge, because they are a young team, he popped it in. That was 2-2, and I was like, great. And that was at 60 minutes. And Club Brugge looked like they were on the up. So I thought to myself, great, they're on the up. They just need to get one more goal. And I kept checking the phone. Bodo Glimt had gotten to 3-1 up. So they were 3-1. And I was there thinking, yes, great. Inter Milan couldn't finish to save their life. So I was there thinking, great, I just need another goal by Club Brugge. And your man Alexander Sorloth came on, the Norwegian fella, the big fella. And I was like, oh shit, because he's an awkward, tricky customer. He got 3 against him in the home game, and he was a nightmare. And the centre half for Club Brugge passed the ball that was on Joel Ordonez. I thought, you fucking idiot. And then he scored against Atletico in the next round when I bet against Club Brugge. And I was like, you prick. If you lose me this money, I'll hunt you down. But in 79 minutes, he scored that own goal completely against the run of play. And it was like 3-2, 3-2, fuck. And then it was all Club Brugge, all the possession, all the chances. And then there was a VAR check. Your man, Christos Solis, who scored a goal against us for Greece, the bastard. But he pulled one back. He's a decent player and a great runner with the ball. In the 89th minute, it was 3-0. So I was like, yes, it's still not lost. So I can't tell you the anticipation because, as you say, from €5 to 1,200, I was there thinking, fuck, this is a great turnaround. And it was so close. So I was thinking, right, this is it. I was like, come on, come on. The adrenaline was pumping. And then the game finished 3-0. I was like, oh, it was so close. And I was like, right, I got it very close. I was so close to winning money on that. And it's not the first time. So I thought I put another one on, which is this one on the next leg. And I put €10 on this time. And geez, I couldn't have gotten them more wrong. So Real Madrid won 2-1 against Benfica. PSG drew 2-all. So 2-1 to Real Madrid, but 2-all PSG and Monaco, and it was in the last minute. Like we won the last kicks of the game. Monaco leveled it up, and Newcastle nearly lost to Karabakh. It was only 3-2 in the end. Atletico Madrid did their part, and Sorloth certainly did his part. So it ended up being 4-1, and he got a hat trick. He had a really good game. And they love him there. I went against my better judgment and bet on Bayer Leverkusen to beat Olympiacos because they were at home this time. Patrick Schick didn't do me any favours, so I'm hoping Ireland go and beat them even more now. Juventus against Galatasaray, and that's in the match, so that's not actually accurate. So Juventus would have won the game. It's just that the aggregate, that was some game as well. Lloyd Kelly getting a red card for going up for the header and then falling on the ankle. I thought that was very harsh. But Uwe went and they won 3-0. That's right, 3-0. So they pulled it back and then it went to extra time. And 2 goals by Galatasaray at the end. Oh, in extra time. There was some really spicy encounters, all right, but I bet on Inter and Bodo Glimt. I should have stuck with Bodo because they'd done me a solid in the previous one. But I thought surely Inter are going to have enough experience, but no. I think they had like 29 shots on goal and they only scored one, and that was their centre back, Bastoni, who got that goal. Fair play to Bodo Glimt for winning 2-1. And then Nottingham Forest, who beat Fenerbahce 3-0 in the previous round. and then they lost 2-1 in this one at home. So you take your foot off the gas once you've already got it wrapped up. But I think the Uve game shows you that you can't. Galatasaray probably took the foot off the gas a little, and Uve punished them for it. But yeah, I got, geez, how many games did they get wrong? Yeah, I got 4 games wrong, and the thing, it was the excitement of nearly winning, getting so close and one game letting me down, and finishing the draw when Club Brugge were so close to winning. The adrenaline rush that I got from that game was insane. I was like, fuck, the devastation you feel after you lose. So what do you think then? I got to get more money on. And even after I put on that bet, um, the following week, so that's me. I won €55 and I lost 15. So I was still €40 up. So I was thinking, okay, I'm still 40 up. I'll put another one on, a few more of the games. I'll just put more money on. That's how it gets you. So a few of the games that I'd already bet on, I was thinking I'll bet on them again because I lost the bet on the first day because which one let me down? Which bastards let me down? Bayer Leverkusen drew 0-0 with Olympiacos. So I was thinking, all right, well that one lost, but I'll go and I'll put another one on. It won't give me as good odds, but I'll just put more money on. Then I put €20 on, and then I end up losing 20. I didn't do it now because I thought, no, fight this now. This is a feeling of impulsivity that they're trying to cash in on. This is exactly how they get you. And I think it's important to kind of bring this to light because they're roping you and then reeling you in like this. You win, you think, great, I'll win more next time. And that's what I nearly did. I came so close to winning €1,200. So that adrenaline rush and then the disappointment, thinking I got so close and I just lost. I'll go and I'll put another bet on and I'll win this time. But it's unpredictable. One game let me down in the last minute, being so close. 4 games next week letting me down. But I thought, fuck it, I'm going to put money on the other teams that I think are going to win, and they end up losing. Nottingham Forest, um, Inter, and PSG. So I would have lost money if I put money on that. So yeah, it's good that I was able to fight that urge, and the fact that I have downloaded the app because they keep giving me offers of free bets, like spend the fiver, get €30 free. And I haven't deleted them yet, because I kind of got reeled in with that and I missed the dopamine hit. When you quit one addiction for another, you kind of do feel like this is it now, You feel like, oh, well, at least I'm not damaging my body by gambling and I can still get that rush of adrenaline and dopamine. As I say, I'm still 40 euro up, but you feel like I'm a fucking idiot. I shouldn't have put that bet on because now I'm down €15. I would have only been down a fiver. I should have just cut my losses and gone, right, you lost that one. I'll step away from it. But it's hard, you do keep getting drawn back into it. And this is only very recent. That came from winning. And if you watch Paul Merson's really good documentary about gambling, he says that he's lost millions, and he's won hundreds of thousands of pounds before, had enough money to pay everyone back and more. And he still couldn't do it because that rush, they just wanting to spend every last penny you have on gambling because it is an addiction. I think this is an important video to make because there's a very high comorbidity with gambling and suicide. I read a stat where people who gamble are something like 7 times more likely to commit suicide than people who are addicted to cocaine or alcohol only. Now, as you say, there is overlap with these addictions, so it's very rare, I think, that you'd be gambling and not be drinking or taking drugs, which makes you way more impulsive. I like this one here because Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the north of Ireland, very similar to us, and I think comparing it will certainly be an interesting topic to discuss. Glossary of terms, definition of gambling. So yeah, we'll go through these because I think it's very important, and I think it was a wake up call for me because I was going to put €20 on the other teams to win. And that means I would be down €35. I'm only down 15 and I'm technically still up because I kept the cash that I had and I put that on. I didn't bet any online money. So still on the up, and luckily I'm able to catch it and go, right, watch this now, because this could get out of hand really fast. So here we go. Glossary of terms. Last month prevalence refers to the proportion of the sample that reported using a named drug in the 30-day period prior to the survey. So, like I was saying, comorbidity, people who are taking drugs and gambling as well. So, if these people have taken drugs within the 30-day period of the survey, they're more impulsive, or they're more likely to be impulsive. Last month prevalence is often referred to as current use. Right. So they've done it last month. They might have quit for a month, but it's based on last month. Okay. A proportion of those reporting current use may be occasional or first time users who happen to have used in the period leading up to the survey. So basically, what that's saying is the people who reported on the study might not do this all the time, but they were doing it when the study was conducted, I assume. I hope. So it should therefore be noted that current use is not synonymous with regular use. Yeah. So I went and I put on a vet last week, but I don't do it all the time. I just decided to go and do it this week or last week. Can't even remember what I'm saying, but you know what I mean. It doesn't mean that they're regular users. And then again, people could be lying about it because they're ashamed. There's a deep sense of shame with this condition, gambling addiction, because you're not actually buying something. If you buy cocaine, that goes up your nose or on your gums. If you're buying alcohol, down the hatch goes. It's consumed. Do you know what I mean? Whereas with this wonderful thing, it's just a piece of paper, and you could win money. But judging by how much money that the gambling companies are making, a lot more people are losing than winning. And that's what they say: the house always wins. Luckily, we are better educated about it now than we've ever been, but it's still not stopping people, and that is quite worrying. And I understand it. You know, I have talked about it before, but I was only 14, 15 when basically all my addictions really started. So we would go on our school lunch break and we would gamble. We'd go to the bookies and we'd be comparing bets. My mate said to me before, "Oh, Dan, do you want me to put a bet on for you?" Because he always had money. And I said, "No, no, no, you're all right." And he said, "Look, I'll put a bet on for you. And if you win it, we'll split the money in half." And I was like, "All right, yeah, go on then." And then it nearly won. And I was like, "Oh, fuck." And then I thought, let's go and do it. And then we'd be in class. We were doing statistics before our maths class, and we were literally going and discussing how we could cheat the system. We were asking our maths teacher, who had a degree in statistics, how do you cheat the system? You know, how do you gamble correctly? You know, we were trying to get him to help us use statistics to win. And he said the best advice I could give is don't do it. Now it's very clear cut advice. We were asking if he could teach us how to count cards and all that, which obviously he's not going to do. Or if he did, he'd be sacked. But the best advice is to not start in the first place, obviously, but easier said than done. So we have another glossary term. Last year prevalence refers to the proportion of the sample that reported using a named drug in the year prior to the survey. Yeah, so they use drugs in the year prior to the survey. Okay. Last year prevalence is often referred to as recent use. Okay, so they could have used drugs in the previous year, but that's also referred to as recent. Okay. Prevalence refers to the proportion of a population that has used the drug over a particular time period. Okay. So a lot of people could have consumed more drugs in a certain period of time. You know, over Christmas, people get awfully depressed because they drink too much, for example, but they might not drink that much regularly. You know, let's look at it now. Just have a sip of this. Definition of gambling. The National Drug and Alcohol Survey, NDAS, defines gambling as buying a lottery ticket or scratch card, playing lottery games online, gambling in a bookmaker's shop, bookies, aka a licensed premises where betting is legally permitted. So your Paddy Power games, your betting casino, or we had Ladbrokes, we have William Hill, Boyle Sports, with too many really. And I made a video going around Gory Main Street and showing you three different places you can gamble, all within a short space from each other and conveniently located right beside the pub. So make of that what you will. So gambling in a bookmaker's shop, licensed premises where betting is legally permitted, gambling online or by telephone, placing a bet at a horse or a dog race meeting, so a racetrack, going to the races, um, the Curragh or Cheltenham or whatever, betting on the greyhounds or the horses, playing games at a casino, playing a game slash slot machine, playing card games for money like blackjack or 21, friends, family. So yeah, and playing bingo. I personally have never been a fan of playing poker with friends. It's like, why would I want to sit here and lose money when I'm supposed to be relaxing with my friends? Do you know what I mean? It's just like gambling for me has always been something that I'll do on my own, or I've chosen to put the money on this. Whereas you're playing cards, I don't really know how to play cards either, to be honest with you. Like, tried blackjack before 21. The closer you get to 21, the better you win. Like, the person who's closest to number 21 wins. So yeah, I don't really understand that. um, but yeah, people who were at the slot machines all day. And when I was in Cortown and we were bringing the kids bowling, what amazed me was in the early hours of the morning, it was a miserable day. Now, we went at about 10 or 11 a.m. and we were playing bowling with the kids. And the toilet, you had to go through these doors, which were in the actual casino part, which is ironic because none of the kids were 18, but you had to be 18 to go in here. Just a lifeless, lost souls in there. It was depressing. It was so fucking depressing. People who were slouched over the thing, pulling the machine and playing it all day, and they could be in there for hours. The same lads were still there when we were leaving. We were there playing the bowling with all the kids, and they were just wasting the hours of the day gambling, which is insane. You just think to yourself, have you nothing better to be doing than losing all your money? Because clearly they weren't winning anything, you know. But anyway, yeah, playing card games for money with friends or family and playing bingo. Elves, older women love bingo. Putting their big pens over and go, bingo. They get very angry when people cheat at it as well. But yeah, that just shows as well that it's prevalent among a lot of people. So I would say the slot machines are obviously over 18, so people who are typically older, what I see, people gambling. And when you see Vegas, you see a lot of 40 and 50-year-olds who have lost years of their life gambling. And they're on the slot machines with their big buckets. They're going around and just losing track of the hours of the day. The people I would associate with gambling on the horse racing and the greyhound racing are typically older men. I've seen men as old as 70s and 80s doing it. But what I've seen a lot of, and this is the gambling I would have done personally the most, is in the bookies betting on football, rugby. I don't really go near boxing or horse racing because boxing is something where it's too hard to call and you don't make any money. You can bet on someone to win, but the odds aren't great. You need to bet on the round that they're going to win, and that's very hard to predict. Um, Whereas with football or rugby, I feel like there's more of a pattern to it. Like, you can look at their previous games, you can see what form the teams are in coming into it. You can also check the team, so you can see what team has been named, and that gives you a better opportunity of doing it the right way. But still, as I've shown with my betting on football, it's very hard to predict. And the Premier League, who would have thought that Wolves would beat Liverpool? Liverpool are just so hard to gamble on right now. And Brentford as well. Brentford are really on the up. Our own Keith Andrews is doing a great job. Good old Keith. People are saying he's playing a very ugly style of Brentford, but it's getting them results. So he's taking down some big scalps as well. More power to him. But I would have done the football, the rugby, more typically football, because I watch more football. Rugby, all I would really watch would be Leinster playing or Munster. I don't really watch the ORC anymore. I watch the Six Nations, so that's something I know. And then I watch international games if they're on. But there's so many sites now you have to pay for games. So I'd watch Champions League because it's still on regular telly, satellite TV. You don't have to pay for any exclusive channels. And that would be the age group where we were all doing it. So we were all going and we knew to take off our school jumpers. And I don't know how it is in other countries. I know in the US, a lot of you don't wear uniforms, but don't think that this was some fancy school. It absolutely wasn't. It's just in Ireland that most schools, except for Educate Together schools, you have to wear a uniform. It's just the standard, really. Us Catholics, we love our uniforms. But yeah, it's really bad to think about it. And one of my dad's close friends, actually my godfather, who I haven't seen in 15 plus years, great moral guardian. He had a gambling problem and it really got him up shit creek without a paddle, where he had debt collectors calling to the door and ended up on lithium carbonate to help him out because he got into such a depressive state because he was after losing so much money. He was a compulsive gambler. And I had a friend come to me after he'd lost all his money and barely had enough money to get home from Scotland because he gambled all of it away. And he was going on a holiday with his girlfriend. So he was bawling his eyes out. He wasn't really the type to do it, but he really was in a bad state. So I was like, all right, look, I'll help him out. Probably against my better judgment. He ended up at the bar he worked in. He gave me loads of free drinks for the night and cocaine to pay me back. So it's not a very legitimate way, but I didn't really care because I got free drinks for the night, free drugs as well. Not that I'm encouraging that, not at all. That was a very messy night, and I ended up depressed for a week afterwards with the come down off the cocaine. But prevalence of problem gambling was measured in the NDAS. So yeah, that's these guys again, the National Drug and Alcohol Survey, the NDAS, just in case you forgot already. So the prevalence of problem gambling was measured in the NDAS through a standard screening instrument asked of everyone who had gambled in the last 12 months. That's what they talk about, yearly prevalence or last year prevalence. The problem gambling severity index. This is a 9 item. Sorry, the problem gambling severity index. This is a 9 item scale, which was specifically designed to measure the severity of gambling problems in population surveys. The four gambler types may be described as follows: non-problem gambler, those who gamble with no negative consequences, i.e., they're not losing jobs or houses or cars, to pay off their debts. Low risk gambler, those who experience a low level of problems with few or no identified negative consequences. Moderate risk gambler, those who experience a moderate level of problems leading to some negative consequences. And then we have the main one. So this is the problem gambler, those with negative consequences and a possible loss of control. Now, if you want to look at it, what would I class myself as? Well, I would probably say low risk. I wouldn't say that I'm a non-problem one because, well, I wouldn't say there's no negative consequences. My mental health is taking a dive because of, you fucking idiot. Low risk gambler, someone who experienced a low level of problems with few or no identified negative consequences. I'm ashamed to say it, but I've taken money off people before. I'm not legally, like I haven't mugged people, but I've stolen things or money to pay for bets, And I'm not here to make myself look like an angel. I'm just going to say it as it is because I didn't want to be losing money on it, but I also felt the compulsion to do it. So now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't mugging grannies to pay for it. But I remember before, like, people would leave their jackets up and their wallet was in the jacket, and I went over and took €10 out of it, let's say. It was never more than that at one time, but it's still not good. Like, and I'm not proud of it. But I'm going to admit to it because I'm trying to make an honest video. I've never asked people for money or borrowed money to do it, but I know people have taken out loans to do it. The way I saw it was it's my problem. So I'm going to go about it the right way. I had real shame in asking people for money. I would say that my mate, I won't give his name for his own safety, but his own pride, let's say. It's not something people like talking about. I would say he's a problem gambler because he called me when he was in Scotland and he didn't have enough money to get home and he had to ask for a loan off a family member to pay for a flight home. That to me is quite problematic. And I felt sorry for him, but I offered him a lot of help and he kind of is the type that thinks he knows it all. Now, I don't wish any bad on him. I hope he's doing all right, but you also have to accept that some people are not going to listen to you, no matter how much you say it. So it's up to him. He was always the type to say, I'm going to buy my own house and I'm going to live out here and start my own business. But you're not going to be doing that if you're problem gambling. And a lot of people I see who are gambling often are construction workers. So you would say they're lowly educated, and that's no disrespect, but they work long physical hours and then they go drinking and gambling. You're wasting all your wages. And one of my brother's friends was doing his carpentry apprenticeship, and he said a lot of apprentices, especially electricians. And if you remember me having Robbie on the show, and I hope Robbie you come back on. Robbie was on the channel doing a few interviews and talking about being an electrician, which my dad did as well, and the prevalence of cocaine use. My brother's mate was saying that he knew guys who were basically gambling away their whole week's wages in one night on drugs, alcohol, and gambling, and then ended up with nothing and having to ask their parents for a dig out. Why do you work so hard only to waste all your money? It makes no sense. So that's why being sober as well. That's one thing. I'm not making as many impulsive decisions. And had I been still drinking, I probably would have been more likely to put that third bet on and lose €20 and then lose more, just compound your problems. It's a big issue, Ari. So the wonderful DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, fourth edition. It's an old one then. Screening tool was also included in the 2019 to 2020 NDAS. Okay, so not the fifth edition, so it's an older, outdated version. So gambling related harms. Evidence shows that the most prevalent negative consequence of gambling is financial harm. Obviously, it's kind of like, well, duh, because you're spending all this money on something that's not giving you anything back. You're putting the money in, but you're getting none back. You very rarely win. It is recognized that problem gambling can harm the health and well-being of individuals, families, communities, and society. Other harms include the disruption and breakdown of relationships with partners, family, friends, and the broader community. Psychological harms, including social isolation, shame, stigma, health and well-being harms, cultural harms, including on one's beliefs and practices, work, study harms, criminality, and life course, or intergenerational harms and losses. So all of what they mentioned makes perfect sense. If you've got a loved one or a partner, she needs you to be financially stable to look after yourself, or he, if the female is the gambler, we don't discriminate here. Your family are obviously concerned about you, and if they're giving you money or loaning you money, they're ending up financially worse off. And if you're just literally pissing it down the drain, eventually they can only do so much for you, it's going to be hard. The partner, family, and friends might try and help. Like I said, my mate came to me and told me he gambled away 5,000. That's right, 5 grand, and that was only on the online gambling. He'd actually done it in the bookies, and he went to casinos, and he was really into it. And I got to see lads in rugby, like they gave into all of their worst addictions. They would drink straight after a game, be eating shite food, be putting bets on, be taking cocaine, be smoking weed, cigarettes. That's why I wanted to get away from it, because I know I obviously have some addictive personality types that could get worse if I'm surrounded by people who are doing it all the time. You're just basically playing with fire if you go into that environment. And that's why I talk about, yes, you have to go back out and socialise, but you also need to be smart and know when to pull back and not really risk your sobriety, And rugby for me, it was the aftermath after the games. That's what really put me at risk because I knew I would drink most of the time, but also gamble. But my mate lost all that money. My voice is gone. Came to me crying, he was in such a bad state. And then we go on a holiday. So this is 4 or 5 years later. And we went to Benidorm and we're sitting in a lovely cafe and we're having a nice meal, lovely cakes and all. I put a few videos up of that. But while the waiter is asking us what we want, he's on the fucking phone putting the bet on. So he's obviously just moved on and still gambles. Whether he's smart about it or not, I don't know. But Paul Merson said that you'll always be an addict. You can't just do it in moderation. And Steve from Sober Living, Sober Lifestyle, or Alcohol Free Lifestyle, Stephen Curry, he says it like you can't do it in moderation. Kevin O'Hara from Habits V2 says you can't do it in moderation either. And they're both talking about alcohol, but addiction in general, I would say you can't do it in moderation because you're an addict. I talk about criminality that I've engaged in. I've stolen money that wasn't mine to put a bet on. You know, one day I'd spent money gambling and I couldn't pay for the shopping, so I stole what I needed from the shop. And not a whole trolley full. Geez, be more impressed if I was able to do that. But I didn't pay for what or not everything. I paid for what I could pay for, and I took the rest. You know, so like that's not good. You don't want to be doing that. That's not good behavior. It's criminal behavior and can get you in trouble. Just thankful that it didn't progress worse than that. The 2024 report looked at the prevalence of gambling and alcohol use using data from 2019 2020 NDAS. The findings indicate that drinkers were more likely to report gambling in the previous year, 53% low risk drinker. So a low risk drinker, not a problem drinker. And then 59.3% alcohol use disorder, so a very high risk drinker. Um, so it indicates the drinkers are more likely to report gambling. Yeah, in that previous year. So they've done it on that previous year. And I mean, at least they're honest. I would have thought that a lot of people would lie about it, but at least they're being open. And then compared with non drinkers who only reported the use in 34.2%. Now, I don't know. What do you think? Would drinkers be more likely to report it because they've lower inhibitions, and then someone who was more level headed and a non drinker, would they be more likely to feel more feelings of guilt and shame over it? I don't know. What do you guys think? Yeah, let me know. It's all because this is all what people are reporting. They could be too ashamed to admit the facts. Like, I'm not saying that anyone here is an outright liar. I understand why you don't want to. I get very snappy and irritated with my family when they ask me if I'm gambling again because I feel like I want to keep this world separate from that world, if you know what I mean. I don't want them having to see me doing it. When we get into this now, drinkers who reported monthly heavy episodic drinking, so drinking heavily in a month, were more likely than low risk drinkers to meet the criteria for at risk, low risk, and moderate risk, and problem gambling. So what we talked about there, the ones who have a problem might be low now, but it could escalate and get to this level eventually, and become problem gambling. Those who met the criteria for alcohol use disorder, OUD, or OUD, AUD. So those who met the criteria for alcohol use disorder, AUD, were more likely to meet the criteria for at-risk gambling, 11.2%, or problem gambling, 1.5%. So there's definitely a comorbidity here. I've got a problem with drinking, which leads to me being more impulsive and less inhibited. And I also have a problem with gambling, because I can't control can't control my inhibitions once I'm under the influence, basically. The available evidence suggests that a public health approach to gambling can reduce gambling related harms. So basically saying that a public health approach will reduce it. So the available evidence suggests that a public health approach to gambling can reduce gambling related harms via the regulation of access to gambling through to the screening of individuals at risk and the provision of services for individuals with an identified gambling problem. Yeah, so that's the thing. I have my rule, which I've broken because I've gotten it on the phone and I'm looking at the phone. I haven't put any bets on. I haven't gone into it. Basically, you have to put in a couple of personal details to verify that you're over 18. Um, but I don't think that's out of concern for under 18-year-olds. I think they would do it if they could get away with it, you know. It's just that they have to do that because they'll get into trouble if not, you know. That's the only reason. Because I've seen things, like I say, with Roblox that are clearly geared towards getting young kids gambling and spending money that they don't have or getting their parents to buy things for them. So yeah, but definitely not going in, like not actually having easy access to it on the phone has helped me not gamble more. For sure, having that rule in place that I don't use it and I actually have to go into the bookies if I want to do it makes it more difficult. So then accessibility is not as easy, and that really does help me stay off anyway for the most part. But I slip up because I did, I won one bet and then I had to put on another two to try and win big again. And who knows, if I'd won 1,200, I could have still ended up in debt because I ended up spending it all thinking I can't fucking lose now. And a lot of people say I'll take the money and I'll walk, but how many actually do, you know? Gambling was identified in 0.6% of suicide coronial files in Ireland over a 6 year period between 2015 and 2020 inclusive. So 0.6% of suicide files, they have gambling being related, but we don't necessarily know if that's true. You know, it could be higher. I reckon it's higher. It's just what they have. But no, it's definitely, there's a high rate of suicide gamblers for sure because they're just pissing away money. And then to get that money back, they're gambling to try and win it back. Then they lose more. You know, you fall into that never ending cycle of roly poly, but you end up spending money to make money, and then you end up losing that money because you don't win, and most people don't win. That's the truth of the matter. You know, most people lose, which is why these companies still exist. If we were all winning, then they wouldn't exist. Do you notice that they always kick people out who win? There's a reason for that. They don't want you coming back, or they block your account if you're winning. But they don't block the accounts of people who are losing hundreds of thousands and then millions in some cases, you know. Or at least they don't do what they should be doing, in my opinion, you know. All they care about is profits, and you're a cash cow. You know, they'll come back to you if you're spending big. The ones who spend the big money are the ones they offer the free bets to, which gets the ball rolling again, which is sick. You know, it's sinful. If they've noticed you haven't gambled in a while and it's been proven, you know, what they'll do is they'll send you a little present, like a €50 free bet, because they know it might seem like a lot, but they know you will just keep spending that money. They look at their statistics and like, oh yeah, this fucker's definitely more likely to actually spend more money. So if we give him this €50 bet, he'll put that on, he'll lose that, then he'll try and get that back. You know what I mean? So it's a really insidious and sick way to do it, but it's also very effective. So how many people gamble in Ireland? I'm trying to keep it more to myself because I don't know. I know it's bad in the US and the UK, you know, bad worldwide really, but really bad in Ireland, the UK, the US, Australia as well. I believe is bad for it too, but not as bad as Ireland and the UK. We are quite bad, especially among young men. We are very bad for gambling because we're also very bad for drinking. So every 4 years, a survey of the general population takes place to estimate the number of people in Ireland who use alcohol and other drugs. Surveys took place in 2002, 2003, 2002, 2000 to 2003, 2006 to 2007, 2009 to 2011, 2014, 2015, and 2019 to 2020. Lot of studies. The latest two surveys included questions of gambling from Table 1, face to face interviews take place with respondents aged 15 plus, normally resident in households in Ireland. This type of survey is not designed to include people who do not normally live in private households. So this type of survey is not designed to include people who do not normally live in private households, so such as prisoners or hostel dwellers. But they've probably ended up there for that exact reason, you know. Prisoners probably really impulsive, and hostel dwellers, they could be in hostels because they've gambled away their life savings and now they're homeless. God love them, you know. A lot of people that we think, oh, they're just homeless and they've ruined their own lives, but they're mentally ill and they're struggling, you know. Surveys took place in, okay, yeah. Sorry, start to sneeze there. Just making sure I have a tissue with me. Pardon me. So surveys took place, yeah, in the same years that I already mentioned. The latest two surveys included questions on gambling. The 2014 to 2015 survey involved 7,005 respondents, people that were taking part. And the 2019 to 2020 NDAS survey involved 5,762 respondents in the Republic of Ireland. I wonder why it was less people. Could have been down to COVID, I suppose. So in 2014, 2015, last month, prevalence of gambling in 2014 to 2015 and 2019 to 2020. So in the last year, you can see here that 64.5 have gambled in the last year in the 2014 2015, but there's a higher number here. So when you look at the 2019 2020, 49. So you can see that there is a lower number, but that's also from a lower population of people, you know. It's the percentage of people that were actually doing it. So it is higher for the 2014 group compared to the 2019, but there might have just been less people reporting it, which there were clearly from this. And then the last month, again, 41.4% for 2014 and 30.7% for 2019. So what it says here is the most recent survey showed that almost half, 49% of people aged 15 plus, say they gambled in the 12 months prior to the survey. So, you know, half of people aged 15 plus, that's quite worrying. It's a lot of people. The most common type of gambling sees 4 in 10 people buying a lottery ticket or a scratch card in person, but 1 in 10 people gambling in a bookmaker shop. My way of doing it. I don't really buy scratch cards, and my grandmother used to do it all the time. You know, they were always doing it. My mum buys them, you know, the odd time, but no, I would always go into the bookies more so. And just under 1 in 10 placing a bet on a horse or dog racing. Placing a bet on a horse or dog race, gambling online, over the phone, or in a bookmakers are the gambling activities associated with the highest spend because it's more convenient. You know, you've got your credit card. Not many people carry cash nowadays, so what they'll do is they'll spend their hard-earned cash online. It's more convenient. It's easier. You can put more on. You can also. But one thing that I found is you can wait until the team is announced as well to put your bet on. So you know more information. You get more options as well to do. That mate that I was telling you about used to literally at a Leinster game that we were at. He was betting on how many penalties there were going to be. He was betting on how many lineouts there were going to be, how many scrums, knock-ons. As the game was going on, he was firing away on his phone, putting bets on. Now that to me is a problem, gambler, 100%. I know it sounds like I'm saying I'm not as bad as that guy, but I'm just saying that was kind of like a warning for me, and yet I still do it, you know. So yeah, placing a bet on a horse or a dog race, gambling online, over the phone, or in the bookmakers are the gambling activities associated with the highest spend. Yeah, makes sense. I've seen people just constantly putting more and more money on 2 to 1 on at Cheltenham, as we always joke. But Almost everyone who gambled in a bookmaker shop or online did so by placing a bet on a sports event. Yeah, almost everyone. That'd be my way of doing it, and I would definitely say that's the most common way I've noticed. Football or rugby, that would be my go-to. Gaelic football, the odd time, not really. I've even betted though on basketball before, and I know fuck all about basketball. Just to accumulate more wealth. You end up accumulating none. When lottery activities are excluded, men are more likely than women to gamble. And that's what I would say as well. It's definitely what I've noticed is there's more men going in and out with the bookies, including number one, myself. I definitely, I've noticed it a lot more in men. Ironically, older women I see in the bookies more often. Most commonly, the only women I really see are the women working in the bookies or the older women. Oh, it's mad. Problem gambling. The survey shows that in Ireland, around 90,000 adults are low risk gamblers, 35,000 are moderate risk gamblers, and 12,000 adults are problem gamblers, which is quite worrying. And I would say it's getting even worse. Problem gambling is associated with living in a deprived area and being unemployed. And there's the thing, like, how many deprived areas do you see bookies? Like, when I was going, like, my dad used to live in Tala, and I would go to see him, and almost next to every pub there was a bookies, and almost everywhere. Have you ever managed to trek out to the dreaded north side of Dublin? They were all over the place in areas like Finglas, Darndale, and Clare Hall, Coolock. They're everywhere, and they would be associated as more rough and impoverished areas. You know, in my own area where I lived, in Ballantyre, there was trying to think, like it was a small little town initially, and then it grew. But we had one Paddy Power, and we had another. We had two actually. So we used to have one William Hill just down the road from the Paddy Power, and that's in a nice enough area. Not ultra wealthy, but not too bad. Then down the road in Dundrum, you'd have more as well. Closer to Rosemount and Mulvey, that sort of area. I noticed in Donnybrook, I didn't see nearly as many bookies, and then Sandymount as well. Maybe I just wasn't looking in the right places, but I didn't see as many. And then when you go to places like Ringsend or Irishtown around there, or in Inchicore, you'd see a lot more. So that's the reason. There's more accessibility because they know people who are on the dole and unemployed. They're probably already addicted to something and they're impulsive and they're looking for a dopamine hit because they're unemployed. They want some sort of feeling and some sort of hit. And that gives it to them. So it's strategically planned. They know these people are more likely to come in and gamble with them. Right? Places where there's higher crime as well. People will steal to pay for bets and all the other shit that comes with gambling. There is a marked correlation between problem gambling and substance use, drug use, alcohol use disorder, and or smoking. And I mean, that's no surprise, really, is it? As I say, every old fella you saw coming out of the bookies having a smoke, and then going to the pub, they'd be drinking. There are people who are highly susceptible to addiction. And if you look at Paul Gascoigne as well, he was addicted to cigarettes, to alcohol, obviously, to gambling, energy drinks he talked about as well, and cocaine. Really addictive personality. He has bipolar disorder, which is obviously associated with a much higher rate of addiction, the impulsivity of mania. With 13% of those with an alcohol use disorder classified as an at risk or problem gambler, compared with the 2% of low risk drinkers. Right, so 13% were more likely to be. So 13% of those with an alcohol use disorder had a higher risk of being a problem gambler compared to the 2% who were the low risk drinkers. So naturally, people who can control their liquor are more level headed and with it, less impulsive. They don't make as impulsive decisions, which is shown here. 2023 study by the ESRI shows the percentage of people who have problem gambling, PG, rated PG, in Ireland is 3.3%. This figure is derived from an online sample and therefore much higher than previous estimates, which were based on an in-person interview or in-person interviews. Yeah, because people are more likely to do it online than compared to an in-person interview. So we're going to see the real figures then, which is showing that their studies are flawed when they're not doing them online. If they're doing them in person, you're not going to get as many people. Therefore, you're not going to get as many statistics, and therefore, you're not going to see as many gamblers. And here's the big issue now, and this is something I started at 14 and 15, really gambling. So saying it now, it's quite worrying. But back then, we all just did it. We all talked about it openly. People from all backgrounds as well were talking about bets they put on Liverpool to win the Premier League, or they didn't put it on Leicester. They should have done back when Leicester won it. You would have gotten a massive payout. Or someone who won like 7 grand putting the bet on that. But gambling among 15 to 16-year-old students in Ireland, the European School Survey Project on Alcohol and Other Drugs, ESPAD, it sounds like a ESPN football channel. They have conducted surveys of school-going children every 4 years since 1995. So that's a pretty good amount of data they would have gotten. They'd have 31 years then of data. So using a standardized method and a common questionnaire, see www.aspad.org. Could say that right, but I trip up on other stuff. The 8th survey was undertaken in 37 European countries during 2024 and collected information on gambling, alcohol, tobacco, and other substance use among 15 to 16-year-old students. So this would be very interesting to see. In Ireland, the final sample included 1,880 students born in 2008. So 1,880 students born in 2008. The study showed 29.1% of students in Ireland gambled in the last year, 31% of males, and 27.1% of females. So, it's on the rise among women as well. 26.5% of students in Ireland gambled on site in the last year, so in the actual bookies, I'm assuming, in the last year. So that's 27.9% of males and 24.9% of females. 16.5% of students in Ireland gambled online in the last year, 19.4% of males and 13.6% of females. 1 in 8, 13.2% students said that they had gambled for money in the previous 12 months, significantly more male, 18.6% than female, 7.5% students. So it's affected men more than women. I don't think we were surprised to see that, were we? And though it is on the rise among women, I'm not saying that we should ignore the problem with women. I'm just saying that it's more prevalent in men. Almost 1 in 10, 9.4% of students said that they had gambled for more than 2 hours on a single occasion at least once in the previous 12 months. I've never done that now, which I'm glad I haven't, but that's quite worrying that they are doing it for that length of time. For further information, go to the ESPAD data portal, where you can search for gambling and filter by Ireland. Okay, so we will probably check that out in the future, and if you want to, you can, but I won't do it in this video. So we'll have a look here. Online gambling among 20-year-olds in Ireland. This is going to be, I'd say, quite shocking. Growing up in Ireland, GUI is a government-funded study of children being carried out jointly by the ESRI and Trinity College Dublin. The study started in 2006 and follows the progress of 2 groups of children, 8,000 9-year-olds, the cohort of 1998, the year I was born, and 10,000 9-month-olds, the cohort of 2008. Data from the 98 cohort, the 1998 cohort, at wave 3, aged 17 to 18, and wave 4, aged 20, of growing up in Ireland. Study population, with the N stands for population. The population is 4,393, assesses prevalence of online gambling at age 20, including key demographic variables. Results show prevalence of online gambling increased by more than 300% between wave three and wave four. Fucking hell. I knew that was going to be worrying, but so that means since so the rate of gambling, basically, let's go through that again. So 8,000 children, 9 year olds, the cohort of 1998, and 10,000, so the 9 month olds, those born in 2008. So when we look at it, so these are aged 17 to 18, the 1998 group, which would have been when I started, and wave four, age 20. Now, for me, it was quite bad, but from 1998, if I'm getting this right, to 2008, there has been a 3,000. I mean, that's still not good, but no, 300% increase between wave three and wave four. So the 1998 group and the 2008 group, there has been a 300% increase in gambling, which is mad. Now, that's down to accessibility, obviously, but that's terrible. I mean, I said prepare yourselves to be shocked, but I didn't fucking think it was going to be that high. Fuck. Males in this cohort far outweigh females in engagement in online gambling. Yeah, not surprising. And you're seeing more and more men sitting at home, unmotivated, lazy, not doing anything with their lives. And this is another reason why, because they can get this dopamine hit by just sitting on the phone, scrolling, doing whatever they want. They can get food delivered, alcohol delivered, porn, and obviously they can waste all their money gambling. Better get that porn and that alcohol first. Because you'll have gambled the rest away online. Shouldn't be joking because this is quite concerned. Little evidence that online gambling has a social gradient. Smoking and high screen time predictors of engagement in online gambling at 20 years of age. Antecedent risk factors include online gambling at 17 to 18 years and having reported a stressful event at the prior wave. Right. Okay. Yeah. So this is quite worrying. So it's the progress of two groups of children. Um, so yeah, it's just like looking at obviously they couldn't be 20 years old and be born in 2008. They'd only be 18 at most. So right, the cohort 20 and 0, yeah. All right, well that is quite worrying, to say at least. A 300% increase, and then that shows you that with easier access, people will gamble online, And then let's look at the comparison here. I'm just going to go through this, and then I think I might leave it at that, guys, because this video's gone on a bit longer than I would have liked, and I'm a bit hungry. I'm a big boy, I'm a grown boy, but I do want to compare it with Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So gambling figures are lower in the Republic of Ireland, 49%, than in the UK, where figures range from 50% in Wales to 67% in Northern Ireland, table two. The north of Ireland. I'll just say it again. Sorry, I have to. I mean, and they're a group that have been more highly associated with trauma, especially with the Troubles in the north. We've a very nice way in Ireland of putting things like people going, the Troubles, and we called World War II the emergency. That's what we called it. When you speak to all your older relatives, that's what they called it. They said it was the emergency, with a really good way of downplaying things, such as saying if someone is a raging alcoholic, they are fond of a few drinks, or he's quite fond of the drink when he's lost his home and his job and everything, because he's a raging alcoholic. I was expecting the UK to be worse, but just an interesting side note, when I've played rugby with lads from the north of Ireland, what I have noticed is they are a lot more prone to addictive behaviour. There's a lot more lads who were taking steroids, I noticed. Now, that's probably easier access because the UK would have better access to stuff than Ireland, but they also smoked a lot, drank a lot, took drugs, and they were quite prone to addiction, yeah, I would say. And I mean, it makes sense given all the trauma they would have gone through in that part of the world. It's only up there. at risk and high and problem gambling in the Republic of Ireland was similar to that reported in England, Scotland, and Wales, and considerably lower than our northern cousins, the north of Ireland. The prevalence of at risk gambling among adults in the Republic of Ireland was similar to that reported in England, Scotland, and Wales, while the prevalence of problem gambling was lower. Well, that's good to hear, but then again, it's also a worry for the UK. So the table two comparison of the prevalence of last year at risk and problem gambling between the Republic of Ireland, my throat's gone, the Republic of Ireland and England, the North of Ireland, Scotland, and Wales percentage. So last year gambling. So this is what they're giving us. This is just the data we have. So it's different years, but you'll see if we go back to this though, there was more data from 2014 to 2015. So I think that might be lied to us because if we see here, if we went from that, it was 64.5%. So actually, that's kind of skewed because we would be higher than England, Scotland, and Wales if we went by that year, you know. We're only 49% in the 2019 to 2020 study, but we'd be a lot higher and we'd be closer to Northern Ireland if we went by the 2014 to 2015, which is very close to 2016 study in Northern Ireland. So that is quite concerning, you know, and how many people are too ashamed to report it nowadays, I would say. Last year, gambling, 2019 to 2020, 49% for the Republic of Ireland, 54% for England for 2018, 67.2% for Northern Ireland in 2016, 63% in Scotland for 2017, and Wales 50.2% 2018. So the Valleys, they're doing a lot of gambling. Mind what an accent it is. Let's have a look at this stat now. So the low risk gambler for problem gambling, 2.3% in the Republic of Ireland for 2019, 2.7% for England 2018, 6.7% for Northern Ireland, 2.7% for Scotland 2017 and Northern Ireland 2016, and 2% for Wales in 2018. So we've a higher and low risk gambler, and then moderate risk gambler 0.9% Ireland, 0.8% in England, 4.9% in Northern Ireland, which is significantly higher. Again, 0.9% for Scotland and Wales, so the same as Ireland. England were actually lower in the moderate section. Problem gambler, 0.3%, 0.5%. So 0.3% for the Republic of Ireland, 0.5% for England, 2.3% for Northern Ireland, 0.8% for Scotland, and 0.7% for Wales. So Northern Ireland is really it's up there, you know. Northern Ireland. There's a funny scene in Derry Girls where there's a medium and he says, "This job pays for your bloody gambling habit, Joe bag." I want you to open up your hearts and give me £7.50. Looks like the Nordies have a real issue with gambling, all right. Poor fellas. But it's not surprising given the levels of trauma they would have grown up around, and it makes perfect sense, really, when you think about it. How many people actually receive treatment for gambling? Let's have a look at that. So, the National Drug Treatment Reporting System, NDTRS, provides data on traded drug and gambling misuse in Ireland. The NDTRS also collect data on episodes of treatment for gambling. Gambling may have been the main reason for a referral recorded as an additional problem. So I drink, but I also gamble, or I take drugs and I gamble, you know. And I've seen athletes, there was only a fellow on Luke Loughlin, the Westmeath footballer, whose main addictions, he said, were cocaine and gambling. This is a fellow who's in his physical prime, but he's still, he's still a compulsive gambler. Oisin McConville, the Armagh footballer, he was talking about losing 200 grand in one gambling sitting, going over to London and losing all his money, wasting it on gambling. So, an athlete in his prime, he said he would just go to training early to avoid facing debt collectors and people he owed money to because he was so ashamed of his problem. So it's a big issue, all right, and among athletes as well. I'd say probably they're more likely because they have those addictive personalities. You know, gambling may have been the main reason for referral, recorded as an additional problem. Treatment cases who reported gambling as their only problem were compared with those who reported gambling either as a main problem or a secondary problem alongside additional problems. Yeah, um, so people who gambling is my only issue, my number one concern. I don't have a problem with drugs or alcohol. Were also compared with those who reported gambling as a secondary or main problem. So I drink, but the gambling is something that I really have an issue with. I don't spend all my money on alcohol, but I spend it all on the gambling, you know. And then additional problems, you might have stress and work or whatever. I'm not particularly sure what it means, but the most recent published data from the NDTRS shows that a total of 3,000 episodes entered treatment for gambling in the 11-year period from 2008 to 2019. Okay, 3,000. 1,580 treatment episodes, 52% reported gambling as their sole problem, so their only problem. I got sole problems. 1,419 treatment episodes, 47.3% reported problem gambling in combination with other problems. The majority were male, 93.8%. It's huge. And they always say that men are less likely to get treatment. So, what does that tell you? You know, statistically, men are a lot less likely to seek out or treatment for any sort of issue. And given that it's still going up as 93.8% are male, that's very concerning. You know, the median age entering treatment was 34 years. Cases primarily attended inpatient services, 56.1%, or outpatient services, 38.7% for treatment. Almost half, 47.3% of all treatment cases reported problem use of at least one drug. So at least one drug is also combined with my gambling, which makes sense. You know, if you're taking a drug, you're also going to be more likely to gamble. It's just a fact. So, what does the law actually say about gambling? So, let's have a look. What can be done about it? So, the Gambling Regulatory Authority of Ireland, GRAI, GRAI, was established on the 4th of March 2025. So, literally only last year, not even a year. Actually, geez, bang on a year. What am I talking about? So, it was today, this year, this law was established. Last year, exactly a year ago, this law was brought in. So, it's not a very long time. You can find more information about Irish gambling laws at the Citizens Information Board website. The functions of the GRAI, the GRAI cloud, regulating the provision of gambling services and activities both online and in person, developing safeguards to protect consumers from problem gambling, particularly to protect children from accessing places or services where gambling activities were offered. So, like I say, I was doing it at 14 and 15, so that's really worrying. They need to definitely get to grips with that. Like, they shouldn't just be concerned about adults. Children are definitely a big concern. The younger you start any addiction, the more likely you are to keep doing it because it's been normalised to you from a young age. I'll just read that out again. Developing safeguards to protect consumers from problem gambling, particularly to protect children from accessing places or services where gambling activities are offered. Establishing both the National Gambling Exclusion Register, establishing a social impact fund to finance research, training, and education on online gambling and gambling addiction. So, establishing a social impact fund to finance research, training, and education on gambling addiction. Okay, so then licensing of gambling services and activities, including maintaining a register of all licensed operators and determining license fees, making sure they're all above board, ensuring compliance by gambling providers with restrictions imposed on advertising and sponsorship. I see it everywhere. You know, I've received about 4 ads today alone on my phone for gambling. So I don't know how well they're enforcing that law, to be honest with you. They're saying the right thing, but are they actually doing it? I don't know. So, ensuring compliance by gambling providers with restrictions imposed on advertising and sponsorship, including a statutory watershed prohibiting gambling advertisement between the hours of 5:30 a.m. and 9 p.m. on television, radio, or on-demand audio-visual media. Well, that's good. That's something at least. Receiving, investigating, and addressing complaints about gambling providers, ensuring compliance by gambling providers with criminal justice, money laundering, and terrorist financing. Paddy Power funding terrorists now. The Act of 2010, and addressing money laundering activities in the context of gambling services, keeping the Minister of Justice informed. Well, they're no use. Helen McEntee was the Minister of Justice. She can barely get anything done. Yeah, I wouldn't be too happy about that. Yeah, what are they going to do? The new person in charge is hardly any better. Keeping the Minister of Justice informed of developments relating to regulation and licensing of gambling services and making recommendations on policies, promoting public awareness and providing information to the public about the regulation and licensing of gambling activities. It all just sounds like saying the right thing. As far as I'm concerned, a few websites there if you want to check them out. Just leave them up for a second if anyone wants to take them down. You can always pause the video at this point as well if you want. There's other fact sheets in this series as well, so might have a look at that in the future, no doubt. This would be one I'd be interested in reading up on, definitely. By Reynolds, CME, Cox G, Lyons S, et al., 2025. A qualitative analysis of people who died by suicide and had gambling documented in their coronial file. I definitely think it's a bigger problem. There's a bigger correlation with gambling and suicide than we think. So yeah, we'll just read this last part and then I'll wrap it up. The gambling industry in Ireland. We've got to the end, people. We've done it. In Ireland, 8,000 people were estimated to be directly employed in the gambling industry in 2017. Gross gambling revenue in Ireland was approximately €2 billion in 2022, with online gambling representing just under one half of those. So online gambling is massive. Like it's really taken over. It's more convenient. You can put more money on, you have more options. And there's always deals come up, put a free bet on, get a free bet when you spend €5 or whatever. They're just dragging you in. It's very addictive, very enticing. And you can see that when I type in the gambling epidemic, which is clearly not a good thing, this is the problem with gambling. It pops up ways that I can gamble. The first three websites to come up are Bet Now, the top 10 gambling sites, best jackpot that you can get, the best blackjack gambling facilities in Ireland. Like, it's ridiculous. And if I see that and I have a problem with gambling when I'm looking up the epidemic, I could click into it and then I could get hooked. It's always bombarding you and bombarding you. And I have a Dutch cousin who said that he couldn't get over the amount of gambling ads when he came to Ireland. It's just not allowed in mainland Europe, and they don't seem to have as many problems with it. So, go figure. So yeah, gross gambling revenue in Ireland was approximately €2 billion in 2022, with online gambling representing just under one half of those. To put the size of the gambling industry in Ireland into context, revenues from gambling in 2022 were approximately the same as those from Irish beef exports, €2.3 billion. And we export a lot of beef. We're known for our great beef. So that's really worrying. And to be honest, I don't see any actual steps being done about it. In my sheltered life, I've seen a lot of people lose a lot of money gambling. I've heard a lot of stories of people who have lost everything to it. There's a few research papers I may take a look at, and I definitely come back to this article. I thought it was good, but I'll stop sharing there, guys. It's just something I wanted to talk about because it's crept up on me while I'm focusing on staying sober on alcohol. And I'm doing well on the alcohol front, thank God. But I slipped up there at the gambling, and I'm still in a net profit. But it's very easy, you know. you win one bet, so you're thinking, oh, I'll put another one on, and then you nearly win on that. You nearly win big on that. €5 could have been €1,000 in no time. So you think, ah, shit, but it was only a fiver. I'll bet a tenner next time, and I'll make more money, and I'll make it this time. I was so close to get the formula right, as you think, but then four bets let you down. It can very easily happen, and it's just something that I wanted to talk about and gave me a humbling reminder. So yeah, that's it anyway. Just wanted to kind of remind you that there are other addictions you need to keep an eye on. Even if you're managing one, you want to manage the other as well. But getting on top of one addiction will certainly help you with the other. So yeah, going live tomorrow at 10 p.m. Irish time, 3 p.m. in Washington and Idaho, and then 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 10 a.m. in Australia. So I hope you'll join me for that, guys. There'll be a lot to discuss. Looking forward to that. Let me know what you think of this video. It's just something I really wanted to talk about while it was fresh in my mind, and just the feelings of guilt and shame that I felt for doing it again. And as you say, I got the online apps, but thankfully, thank God, I haven't put any bets on. I should go and delete them now so I don't make a mistake. But keep an eye on it if you have a problem with it. You don't look any worse for it necessarily because you're not putting anything into your body, but there's a high correlation with suicide, and there's also, a really big financial impact on your friends, your family, loved ones. There's a deep feeling of guilt and shame, and it's a massive issue in Ireland and the UK. So we need to be doing more. I don't think enough is being done about it now. The fact that I type in epidemic gambling problem in Ireland and it comes up on ways that I can gamble. The first thing to go up isn't help, it's how you can gamble, which is pretty sick. It's pretty sinful. But anyway, guys, I'll wrap it up there, and please join me tomorrow for the live video. Hope you can all be there, and I'll talk to you then. Slán go fóill. Bye for now. See you guys.